Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson. It's time on this Thanksgiving version of the Run for God Run Club for the Run for God podcast. And who is here to join me? Well, of course, it's Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
So we're going to have to put in a few extra miles this week to offset the turkey and dressing and cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie, right?
Well, you know me. I'm always good for extra miles. I don't mind extra miles a bit. It's been a busy last few weeks, hasn't it? With everything going on.
It's been crazy, yeah. Hey, I want to give an update on my shoe drama.
Yeah.
I sent you a picture the other night. You know, I had the insoles from my old running shoes and my current walking shoes on here last episode, and I was talking about how my walking insoles are just trashed, and I showed the difference. So I thought, well, I'll take my old running insoles and put them in my walking shoes. 3 walks, less than 15 miles later, and I already have holes in the walking. Now, I've got a phone call into Chad up at Front Runner, and hopefully he's going to be able to give me some wisdom. He actually called me back yesterday afternoon, didn't get a chance to talk to him. But something's going on. And it's happened since I've started picking up the pace and walking longer. But I can feel it, Dean. I can feel as I get into, 4 or 5 miles. It was on that tempo walk the other day, or tempo run, what everybody was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I could feel the heat just starting to build and build and build. And finally, I just backed it down because I knew I was going to have another gnarly blister if I didn't watch it. Yeah. And I get home and I got one hole and one almost hole in my right foot. It's only my right foot. So I don't know what's going on, but I will keep everybody posted because I'm sure I'm not the only one. Well, maybe that's how it usually works with me. I'm the only one in history that this stuff happens to.
Yeah.
But I'll keep you updated on what's going on and how I fix that.
Well, we talked about it, and, like I said, you spend so much more time on your feet with pressure on the bottom of your foot when you're walking, and it makes sense to some degree, but to wear out that fast is
But how to fix it's the question.
Yeah, how to fix it, yeah.
I would say it's a lacing issue because when you're running, tightness can be a bad thing. Yeah. It doesn't matter if, I've always said if your shoes are almost falling off, it really doesn't matter when you're running. But I guess just that extra time on the ground, allowing your foot to move that much inside the shoe is problematic. That's my hunch. The problem is there's just not a lot of information online about this.
Yeah.
We're just like with, welcoming runners in next year to the Marathon Challenge, we're kind of in uncharted territory. Now, I'm sure there's just a lot more running information than there is walking information.
Yeah.
So it's my goal to dig in and figure this out.
We'll get to the bottom of it sooner or later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
So, hey, let's talk about the sponsor this week. Again, if you wanna come on board as a sponsor for Run for God and allow us to promote your business and for you to support this ministry, we need all the support we can get. Our sponsors are awesome, but this week it's Superior Plumbing and Electrical. Superior Plumbing and Electric has the best service of all your plumbing and electrical needs. They do commercial, industrial, and residential. They service Calhoun and all the surrounding areas, counties right here in Georgia. You can find them on Facebook at Superior Plumbing and Electrical today. Again, if you want to be a supporter of Run for God, send an email to runlanehollis@gmail.com. We've had a few new ones come on board here recently, and it's exciting.
It is. Well, we had a Facebook post from this week that I wanted to share, and this one, I honestly just kind of wanted to share it just because of who it's from.
Yeah.
Just because I love this couple, Elizabeth and Brian Morey, Team Morey, as we call them. It says this: Recovery week, marathon is Saturday. I looked at the weather, but I'm not going to let it get me down. I'll still shine my light while running. This is what the burning river prepared us for. This, thankfully, is on the road, so I will be fine. Mitchell Hollis and Dean Thompson, I love you two and this ministry and the best group of people around that turn into family. I did already share my story, podcast number 50, for anyone that wants to listen. I will, of course, be sharing my why in Mitchell's post later. I hope you all have a blessed week and night.
Yeah, and what she's referring to on the sharing her stories, we've actually got a countdown clock series going. If you're a member of Run Club, you're not getting the emails, but you're seeing the Facebook posts. We don't want to inundate your inbox because you're already a member of Run Club. You know, this is kind of our effort to get to 10,000. We're kind of doing our part here, but we're sending out an email every day with reasons why, counting down. I think we're at like day 60 right now, 59 or 60, until the Marathon Challenge starts for 2022. And we're sharing people's stories because that is the best advertisement is people's stories. And of course, Elizabeth has an incredible story, but that's what we're doing every single day. If you're not a member of Run Club, we are inundating your inbox because we want you to join. It's that simple.
Right. Yep.
And that's the reason we do it, because we know what it'll do for you. So just bear with us. It's going to go all the way through. We got about 60 days left. Some people are sending us some great stories.
Yeah. Well, Brian and Elizabeth, I'm sure this is going to come out after their marathon.
Sure.
I'm sure they did shine their light nice and bright.
They always
do. There's such a great example of folks within the Run Club. People they have this energy about them that you're just drawn to want to know what's different about them.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of who we're called to be, to kind of be set apart.
Well, I think I've said this before. I love their selfies.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of selfies you see out there, it's people are kind of setting up the background. They're fixing their hair. They're doing whatever. You know, Brian and Elizabeth, they post these selfies. They may have a dog jumping on the couch in the background, or their little girl out running, or it's they're real photos. And I love those kind of pictures. And they're just a great couple, great addition to this Run Club for sure.
Yeah, they talk about being thankful for the group. And you know, the world has changed, and the whole social media thing, we talk a lot about how negative social media is, but there are certainly some positive pockets for social media, and this is definitely one of them, and a good time for us to embrace that new technology. All right, so we had a trivia question last week that was this: what is aqua jogging, and why is it important for a runner to know about it? So have you ever heard of aqua jogging? I'm sure, right?
Yeah, you know, Lane did quite a bit of it when he had his injury.
Yeah.
It was, I had never heard of it till then. I mean, I had heard of it, but I really didn't know what it was. I thought it was running laps in a shallow pool.
Right.
But yeah.
It's a little bit different than that, though, isn't it? Yeah. It's also known as deep water running. It's a great cardiovascular exercise. And what the idea is that you get in water, and water has a resistance to it, because, you know, if you ever try to move your hand real fast through water, you know, it slows your hand down because
the harder you push, the more it pushes back.
Right. Yeah. And so what happens is you get in there and you put a belt on, a flotation device that keeps you at the right angle in the water, and you mimic a running motion.
Sure.
And it's pretty hard. Yeah. It's a lot harder than you would think it was.
Well, talk about working your stability muscles.
Yes. Yeah.
You spend as much energy just staying upright, and because I mean, you got that belt on, that helps, but you've still got to have some core strength, and you're working everything. Yeah.
But at the same time, you're working those leg muscles, and you're actually, a lot of people, they'll use aqua jogging or running for trying to improve their form. Because it's easy to really focus on your form when you don't have to worry about your foot landing and staying upright.
And you are focusing on those stability. That's all you're focusing on really is your form, because you're trying not to drown.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Lane did it while he was hurt. This is a great injury rehab exercise to do. A lot of times we talk about swimming and cycling, and those are great. Aqua jogging, if you can get access to it. It's not the easiest thing to get access to, but if you can, it's great for injury rehab, because there's literally no weight bearing at all. And so you can do you're doing the exact same motions you do when you run with no weight bearing. And so it's It's really good for, now it depends on the running injury. Obviously there's some things you can't do it with, but there's some things where swimming is better.
Yeah.
Because you've got a problem where, even just mimicking the motion is not good.
We actually did a project a few years back, Orchard Place down the road here. And this past summer, some of it's not a retirement community, but it's mostly retirees that live in there. And come by one day, and there was probably 7 or 8 ladies in the pool, all aqua jogging. They were doing a little aqua jogging class.
Yeah.
And it was pretty neat to see because, like I said before, Lane's thing, I really didn't know what it was. So.
Yeah. But the guy that we had on here, we talked about nutrition.
Yeah.
Dr. Spider Celery. He is a huge proponent of aqua jogging. I mean, it's his first question is, well, is she aqua jogging?
Right.
Because that's the first thing.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's really big on it. And it's particularly good too for people, if you have joint pain, if you've got arthritis and things like that, where sometimes it just gets to be too much running. Mm-hmm. This is a good way to kind of get the miles in without actually pounding on those joints so heavily. So it's really good for that. So
yeah, I think, anything you can do, especially if you're feeling chronically sore or anything like that, anything you can do to mimic running but not have the pounding is a great thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
one of the other benefits of aqua jogging I never would have thought about, that I was just kind of looking up, kind of researching, and I thought I never thought about that, is if you really hate the extreme hot or the extreme cold, well, you don't get either when you're aqua jogging. It's basically the same temperature all the time. Right? So it's... Yeah,
I don't know about that. You go to the wellness center pool and you'll die if you try to... I mean, they keep that thing hot tub type temperature.
It is pretty warm.
But yeah,
it's still nowhere near as hot as being 95 degrees outside.
Yeah, if it's like a summer morning in the pool, that would be refreshing. But you go in some of these wellness center type facilities where they keep that water hot and no air moving, that could be miserable.
Yeah. So here's a suggestion. If you have access to a pool where you can do this aqua jogging, maybe try to supplement your running with the aqua jogging. Learn how to do it while you're healthy. And then if you do sustain some type of injury, you'll have a great thing to fall back on to try to keep you healthy and keep your cardiovascular system going while you recover from whatever that injury is.
Sure.
It's a good way to get in some extra miles for folks that are training for those extra long distances. If you're going to run a marathon or a half marathon, sometimes the being on your feet gets really tough on your body, and it's a good way to get the work in without being so tough on your body. So get out there. You do have to have, in order to do it right, you have to have a flotation device around your waist. They're not very expensive. You can find them. You can, go to the old trusty Amazon and just type in aqua jogging belt and boom, you'll have plenty of options. It helps get you in the right position and allows you to do that running motion. Try that out.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So we've been kind of pounding the pavement on 2 issues here lately. Number 1, coaching the Marathon Challenge. So if you're out there and you've been thinking about possibly opening this up to your community, we're going to urge you right now, do it. We've had some of our tried and true instructors from the past. We've had some new coaches come on board who are starting to post their flag on their communities. I saw Ben Reed made his official just a day or 2 ago. No telling how many people he'll have up there in Ohio. But it's the idea of you're gonna invite people in your community to go alongside us next year as we go from the couch to the marathon, walking or running. And we've made everything easy. We've created the videos for you that will drop every Sunday. You simply put the video in, hit play on your computer, throw it up on a TV screen, whatever. Watch the video, and then discuss it. And then go run.
It's pretty simple.
It's really that simple. It really is that simple. And that's what I want to really drive home is, unless you want to, like I said, there are the instructors out there who, man, they can put on a production, and it's really impressive. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be literally as simple as 4 or 5 people in a living room watching the video and then going out for a run. 3 to 5 runs, depending on where we are in the year. Chances are you already run. Chances are you already have a group of friends that you hang around, and chances are you go to church. And you can simply massage this in to the routine that you already have. It's not a lot of time, even though it seems like it. To read all the information, we want to give you more information than you need.
Right.
Because people do like to cater this to kind of how they like to do things.
Sure.
Some people like a bigger production. Some people like to keep it simple and have 2 or 3 people. Either way, it's the right move, because we say it all the time. If you're coaching, facilitating, instructing, whatever you want to call it, it's going to change you as much as the people that you're leading.
So let me ask this, because I just went through this thing where I had to register. I get this email that's got 15 to 20 links on it of information that I need in order to get our team ready to go to nationals, right? And so I'm clicking on these links, and some of them are legitimate. I got to fill out a form. I got to, register the team. Some of them are just, and then there's a lot of information in there. Tell everybody, if you're going to look towards, you just want the nuts and bolts of how can I do this class and do it like you're talking about. Really simple. What do I need? Where do I need to go to get just the bottom line? Here's what I need.
Well, first of all, you need to join Run Club. Right. That's the basis of everything. Is you got to be a member of Run Club, because everything is housed inside of your login. But once you do that, you go to coaching, and it lays out exactly what you need to do. Basically, we give you all of the social media promotional stuff. We even have signs that you can have printed at your local print shop. We've got everything you need to do inside of your Run for God Run Club login. And then you just start putting the word out through social media. That's the best way, is social media, putting the word out. A lot of people put a sign out in front of their church, and we have those to where you can print them. I think they're up to like 6 feet long. Yeah. Some of the signs we have, you can have those printed. I mean, maybe $100. I don't know how much they are to have them printed. But you just start getting the word out, and people are going to simply go to runforgod.com and register themselves. And then that way, not only are you getting all the information every week, but your students are also getting all the information every week. So it takes a lot of the burden off you. So if somebody misses, then they're getting the video. They can watch it. You're not having to figure out who missed and send them the information. We're taking care of all the logistics on this side, and we've been planning it for months already. And it's going to be a really easy system. The other thing that we're pushing right now is the 1-year Run Club member gift boxes. Yeah. I was watching on the news again this morning. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the supply chain crisis. People are not going to have their Christmas gifts in time. Well, guess what? You can have this one in time. You get this beautiful Run Club box right here. You get a 1-year membership gift certificate that comes in a nice card that's, you can presents well. You get the box. You can simply wrap this box. It comes with a hoodie and the bumper sticker, all for the price of a 1-year membership. So you're getting the hoodie, the gift box, the bumper sticker, all that for free. It's a great gift. It's at the right price point for most people. You can get it in. You can put some wrapping paper and a bow on it, and hand it to as many people as you want to this Christmas. And it's a great gift. Yeah. It's a gift of not only the word, but of getting healthy. Getting healthy both physically and spiritually, and I can't think of a better gift.
Yeah, and I've heard some people who have gotten the devotions books, and they have said, people who don't run, and they've said, I really enjoyed that. I didn't think I would enjoy it because it's all about running, but I really enjoyed it because it's got, the spiritual application is there, whether you're a runner or you're not a runner.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is all about.
That's right.
We're going to talk more about devotions here in just a little while. We got some big news to share today.
Yeah.
So stay
awesome.
tuned.
All right.
Social media?
Nope.
Grocery store tabloids?
Nope.
The newspaper?
Not usually.
The national news?
Are you serious? Is there any media source these days that only shares a positive message? A lot of the media we take in each day can be pretty negative. Why not make the decision right now that your music will only be positive? Sign up for an account at JRadio.com today and download the app in your app store with music for every moment and entirely positive Christian message. It'll be nice to hear things going right for a change.
All right, so we're back, and like we say every week, if you've got questions or you want to get a message to us, you can send a message to dean@runforgod.com. That's dean@runforgod.com. For questions for Dean, you can also email customer service. That'll go to Miss Gay and Miss Holly in the office. You can email customer service at runforgod.com or dean@runforgod.com if you got running specific questions. Dean, we got some big news.
Big news.
Big news. We've alluded to this the past 2 weeks, and we can officially share it. And I'm just going to read the press release. That'll be the best way to kind of get everything in there. The press release is for immediate release. Run for God and Guidepost team up to bring devotions to the running community. For almost 12 years now, Run for God has been sharing the hope and the message of Jesus Christ through the sport of running to runners all across the globe. Having now served over 250,000 graduates in over 6,000 communities around the world, the team at Run for God has never had a shortage of incredibly inspiring stories. In 2014, the Run for God team began to archive the stories, emails, letters, and even the occasional phone call in a format that can inspire others. Mitchell Hollis, founder of Run for God, reached out to local running legend Dean Thompson for help. Hollis had a hunch that if you took the inspiring stories they had been receiving for years and coupled that with a weekly dose of running advice, then they may have something. As for Dean Thompson, it didn't take much arm twisting for him to agree to help with this project, and with that missing piece, Devotions was born. The Run for God team has always kept its focus on the training side of the ministry, and writing, supporting, and serving those who have taken and taught the challenge courses has kept them busy. The Devotion series on its own is an incredible compilation of inspiring stories that many times leaves readers encouraged and motivated. Couple that with the weekly dose of Dean's thoughts, the inspiring stories had readers ready to find their old running shoes and take off for a walk or jog. Mitchell Hollis has often talked about praying for street lights. He says that when God lights up a street light, then we are to work there until he lights another. This past August, Run for God was approached by Guidepost about working together with respect to devotions specifically. This was a street light that the Run for God team, as well as its board of directors, simply could not ignore. Guidepost is a nonprofit organization that encourages spiritual well-being through inspirational content. Founded in 1945 in Danbury, Connecticut, by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, with just one magazine, Guidepost has now grown into one of the greatest publishers of inspiring content with millions of followers around the world. Carolyn Mandurano, senior managing editor for Guidepost, says that Guidepost spreads hope through its many publications, including devotions for all interest. We know our customers tend to use more than one devotional, and within our suite of products, we saw the need for devotions for an active lifestyle. Run for God was a great fit with content focused on the runner and their faith journey. Guidepost will begin publishing the Run for God devotion series in spring of 2022, starting with Volume 1. They will also be changing the name to Running in Faith Devotions for Runners to help bring clarity to the product when sold along Guidepost's other incredible titles. The teams at Run for God and Guidepost are excited about this new opportunity and hope that you will be too. Stay tuned.
Man, that's awesome.
Dean, what it says is these stories matter.
Yeah.
We say it every single week. Your story matters. And this is proof of that. Guidepost is, we're tiny compared to Guidepost.
Yeah.
They're a huge organization. And this is in large part to what you've written, but it's also in large part to the stories that people submit. And it's so exciting to know that many of these stories now are going to be going out far beyond what we could ever reach.
Yeah.
And, this is exciting, not only that people who aren't runners on a large scale are going to be seeing these stories, but also that millions of people are going to be introduced to Run for God and what we do here. And I just, I can't even begin to think about what this could do.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's really exciting.
And, I do pray for streetlights. I've talked about that for years on this podcast. And we talked about one day during the podcast, I was actually going to pick up an actual streetlight for a project that we're working on when all this started kind of heating up.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, what is a streetlight? What is the definition of a streetlight? It's a guidepost.
Yeah.
That may sound cheesy, but it gives me goosebumps when I say it out loud, because this is not me, this is not you, this is not Carolyn, this is not Guidepost, this is not Kelly at Guidepost. This is God weaving that tapestry.
Yeah.
That when you really just step back and you get outside of yourself sometimes, it'll take your breath away.
It will.
It's a
really cool story. Two things I didn't realize. I did not know they were in Danbury, Connecticut. Do you know what historical significance Danbury has?
I don't.
It was in the letter to the Danbury Baptist Church where Thomas Jefferson talked about the wall of separation between church and state, where everybody gets this idea of separation of church and state, which they falsely, typically, attribute that to what he meant by that.
Right.
And that was in Danbury, Connecticut.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know they were in Danbury.
Wow.
So that's the first thing I think about when I think of Danbury, Connecticut. And then I do have to say, I don't know who wrote the press release, but the whole local running legend thing is way out of bounds.
I think I said that and it stuck. So, but it's true. I mean, it's funny to see. I mean, in that one story, we've got a lot of stories about the history of Run for God,
true.
But that one story just has so many inputs of that we didn't even realize it was happening until you sit here and you read that. And there again, I mean, that is a story. This is why stories are so important, because and we're going to talk about looking back in Shannon's story here.
Yeah.
That's why it is so important to look back. That's what this press release is a look back, just a small look back at what God has done and where he could potentially be taking this ministry and Guidepost. And I don't know, it's really cool. But it's for that reason that we said 2 weeks ago that going forward, if you submit your story, it's gonna have to be done through the website, because we have to have those legal sign-offs and things like that just to make sure everybody's covered and on the same page. So Dean is going to require, if you send a story and it's through an email, he's going to ask you to resubmit it through, because we still will be using these for the podcast, but there's a good chance that they'll go on from the podcast into a devotions book. And, for those of you out there who may not like the idea that they're changing the name, devotions in the context of a Run for God store makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But devotions in the context of an organization that all they publish is different kinds of devotions, it doesn't make much sense. That's the reason for the name change, and it just brings a little bit of clarity. So
it makes
we're
sense.
excited.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about a story now then. Here's the question. What does it mean to be a new creation? We're going to discuss that this week in this week's story. And it is from Shannon Clifford. Shannon Clifford, those of you who are on the Facebook page, you know the name Shannon Clifford. So that's a very faithful Run Club member, Shannon Clifford. And this one is called Becoming New. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. That's 2 Corinthians 5:17. Have you ever read that and wondered, why don't I feel new? Or thought, wow, I thought he or she gave their life to Christ. Why are they still acting like that? Believing that God provides lessons in nature to help us understand spiritual principles, let me take you inside the workings of a beehive. As a beekeeper, it is important for me to know what is going on inside my beehive. Although the bees will most certainly take care of themselves without me, regular hive inspections are necessary to prevent problems from developing that I don't want to deal with. One such problem happened to me a couple of years ago after I moved my hive to a warmer location for the winter. I waited to inspect until spring when it was warmer. When I finally got around to opening the hive, I found that the bees had swarmed, which is how they reproduce. During swarming, about half the population of the colony will take the queen and leave, moving on to establish a new colony and leaving the remaining worker bees to create a new queen, which they do by feeding a special diet to a chosen larva. After the new queen emerges, she will leave the hive for her mating flight, then return to the hive to do her job of laying thousands of eggs a day, thus keeping the colony going. All of this is a natural process that God has set in motion. However, in my area, Africanized bees are common, and my new queen mated with Africanized drones. Contrary to popular belief, Africanized bees are not all killers, and they weren't too bad the first time I got into that hive after this happened. I noticed that the bees were kind of cranky, but I thought it was due to this being the first inspection of the season. When I moved them back home, things got worse. At one point, I opened the hive and there were so many bees in the air, defending their colony by trying to sting me. Thankfully, my bee suit protected me, but I had to call a beekeeper with more experience than me to take them off my property because they had become dangerous. I love beekeeping, but that was not fun, and I am a hobbyist. I am not up for working with aggressive bees or having them in my neighborhood. Not wanting to give up my hobby, I found a solution, which was to replace the queen. Whether the queen bee is calm or spicy, the rest of the hive will follow suit as they get their behavior traits from her. This new queen was very spicy, and the Africanized genetics she was passing on created a perfect storm of dangerous bees. So I purchased a queen that had the genetic traits I wanted, dethroned the spicy queen, and introduced the new one. To introduce the new queen, she must be in a cage inside the hive for about a week so that the colony can get used to her pheromones and have time to accept her. Otherwise, they will kill her. Boy, that's a scary thought from that bee standpoint. After this time, she is released and commences egg laying. A worker bee's lifespan is about 60 days, so after a couple of months, all the bees in the hive were new. I now had a hive of gentle bees that were easy to work with. In essence, the colony had become a new creation, as mentioned in 2 Corinthians 5:17. Much like this lesson from the bees, when we are in Christ, we are becoming a new creation. It is an ongoing process. We have replaced our old nature with Jesus, making him our king. But just like when I replaced the queen in my hive, it isn't necessarily an instantaneous happening. It takes time and exposure to his nature for all the old behaviors to be replaced by the new ones. But make no mistake, the changes are happening, even if it's not evident right away. This is also true with running. You start out with shorter times and distances, and over time you work your way up to greater times and distances. Have you ever known someone who decided to be a runner and went all out and tried to run a 10K within the first month? They may have been able to complete the distance, but they put themselves at great risk of injury and being sidelined before they even really got started on their running journey. If you have recently become a new creature in Christ, have patience with yourself and let him work the process in your life. Work towards the goal of knowing that not everything in your life will change immediately. Do your part and let Jesus do the rest. Read your Bible so that you will know what the plan is, just like we follow a running plan to work towards our distance goals. One day you will notice that you have completely changed, just like the bees when they received a new queen, or a runner who has given themselves time to work up to a marathon. As Christ followers and runners, we are always in the process of becoming. We never truly arrive. However, one day you will be able to look back and see that although you are still becoming, you are a totally new creation.
Man, that's a great story, Shannon. I knew that running paralleled our faith, but who knew that beekeeping parallels to our faith?
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, I learned more about beekeeping than I ever knew in my whole life.
Yeah.
In that 5 minutes of reading that.
I love that. It sounds like one of the Dean's thoughts, right?
It does.
Because that's kind of the way I like the Dean's thoughts things to go.
But it's one of those examples that we can take. Looking through the right lens, everything in our life can be paralleled to our walk with Christ. Really,
it's all about the lens.
It's all about the perspective. It can be a destructive perspective, or you can look at it through the lens of how is this making me a better follower of Christ. Now, the answer may be it's not, but still, it can be looked at through that lens of our walk with Christ. And I had no idea how beehives worked, and I've always heard the phrase "a swarm of bees." Now I know what that is.
Yeah.
So
I've known some people who have been beekeepers, and typically beekeepers they're usually different people.
Yeah.
So I don't know Shannon very well. I just know her online persona. But and when I say different, I don't mean bad different.
No.
I mean just interesting, because you have to be interesting to decide to take up a hobby like beekeeping, I would think.
Well,
but it's pretty cool.
It's an interesting hobby or business. Some people make it into business. By the time this airs, I should be in Mexico Beach, which is in the panhandle of Florida, at my in-laws' house, and down there beekeeping is huge, because you've heard of Tupelo Honey.
Yeah.
Well, Tupelo Honey is only found in a small community just outside of Mexico Beach, Florida, and it's because they have the Tupelo flower, and all these bees down there pollinate and get the fragrance or the whatever from that flower, and all the Tupelo honey that you've ever heard of comes from this one little community. It's called Weewahitchka, Florida, and it's this little bitty one stop sign. They don't even have a red light, I don't think. Community where all this honey comes from. But I've learned a lot of my beekeeping knowledge, what limited it is, from down there.
Huh. Well, I didn't know that.
Really?
Tupelo honey, I assumed meant it was from Tupelo, Mississippi.
Nope.
I mean, so
Tupelo honey comes from the Tupelo flower, which is along the Appalachia-Cola River.
Wow.
And if you remember, well, you probably don't remember. You're like me. I get honey. It's honey. But Tupelo honey was very scarce because Hurricane Michael came through and took out a lot of the Tupelo flower trees that produce that or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting. That's I love these.
I love it.
I love these stories.
I do too. And she's talking about, the whole analogy is that God doesn't change us overnight, that it's a constant process.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, well, you're right. And I think about the skit guys. If you ever watch the skit guys, you know the skit guys, and we've had some skit guys stuff on there. And that one that's called God's Chisel, where he talks about chipping out, and God goes and he gets those things about us they're not good things, and he chips those away. And sometimes those things hurt, and sometimes it feels good for those things to be chipped away, but they're things that need to be out of our life. And just like a sculptor doesn't finish a sculpture just overnight, it takes time to create that thing, and that's the way it works with us. And I know in my life and in your life, we've seen that in our own lives. We look back at ourselves 10 years ago and we go, man.
Thank God for grace.
So, yeah. And I'm so glad God is working.
Sure.
Because, man, how much better is life today than it was 10 years ago, too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
2 Corinthians 5:14-17. For the love of Christ controls us, having concluded this, that one died for all. Therefore all died, and he died for all, so that those who live would no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose on their behalf. Therefore, from now on, we recognize no one by the flesh. Even though we have known Christ by the flesh, yet now we know him in this way no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, this person is a new creation. The old things have passed away. Behold, the new things have come. I'm kind of drawn to the very first words here. For the love of Christ controls us. I don't know that I've ever noticed that in this, as famous as this passage is, and as much as we know this passage. For the love of us, for the love of Christ controls us. And I guess if we truly belong to him, that's the way you can tell if somebody truly is saved or not.
Sure.
Are we allowing Christ to control and move us in a direction? Obviously, pulling back occasionally because we're human and doing the wrong thing, but are we allowing the love of Christ to control us? Because that's really what he's saying, right?
Right.
And we have that choice of whether we let him use that chisel or not. And he gives us that choice. Sometimes I wish he wouldn't give me that choice, right? But that's the way it is. I remember one time, this is a crazy story. You're not going to believe this story when I tell you, but this is 100% true. When I was a kid, I told my mother one time that I deserved to pay a price for something. I don't even remember what it was I did, but I did something wrong. And I really did feel bad about whatever it is I did wrong. And I told my mother she should punish me. It's a true story.
Lapse in judgment there.
Yes, it was. I only did it once. I never went back.
Because if I know your mom, she probably punished you the same way my mom punished me.
She did. She did. She did punish me. She went ahead and followed through on my request. And
she gladly.
It was. I don't remember what it was. She took something away from me or something. It wasn't. My parents weren't big on physical things, but they were on other things.
So you didn't get the old Southern whooping.
No, I didn't get that. Of course, we were from the North, so.
Oh yeah, so you weren't even in the, okay.
Yeah, we didn't have I never had to worry about my mother going out and getting a switch, for example. People in the South, they know what a switch is. I didn't even know what a switch was.
I had to go pick my own switch one time.
Yeah,
that's the worst. I mean, you stay out there for like 3 hours and you come back and say, I couldn't find one. Then it's bad when you do that.
Yeah, aren't we glad God doesn't make us go out back and get switches for ourselves? Anyway. Sometimes I get upset. I look at this and I think, if we're in Christ, we're new creations. We change our behavior. We're different. We're called to be different. But sometimes as Christians, the way we talk about people who are unsaved is really bad.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. They don't know what it's like to be controlled by Jesus, to do exactly what this is talking about. And why should we expect them to? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't expect them to. And I just had a conversation with some of my college girls about something along these lines, about how black and white is good. Mm-hmm. It's good when we're talking about our own principles and what we do, and we don't compromise, and we follow the biblical principles and things like that. But we can't expect everybody else to feel that way. Mm-hmm. We have to encourage them that, look, this is what I do, and this is the fruit that has resulted from those good things, and show them that there's a reason why being this way, doing the biblical thing, is a good thing, right?
Yeah, and when I read this, I when my younger years, when my kids were very young, I helped teach RAs, and if you go on down in 2 Corinthians to 5:20, it says that now we are ambassadors for Christ, and what this is saying is that we're ambassadors. We're not simply messengers. And there's a difference here. It's kind of like our sponsor for this week, Superior Plumbing. I'm not just a messenger of theirs. I'm not standing up here saying, if you live in North Georgia, you need to use Superior Plumbing. I know who they are. I'm willing to support them. And I've personally used them for years. And I'm willing to go out on a limb and suggest that you need to use Superior. This is an extra plug for Superior here. But I would go out on a limb and say, you need them if you're having plumbing problems. But many times as believers, and it goes back to your point, we tell people, you need Jesus. And I'm guilty of that. I've done that before myself. I think we've all done it. Mm-hmm. But we need to be showing people why. We need to be an ambassador for Christ, not simply a messenger. A messenger just goes out and talks.
Right.
An ambassador lives.
Yeah.
And then shares.
What a great...
Why? And it's, you just said, this is what I do and here's the fruit. That's the way you go about sharing Jesus. Yeah. It's not, you need Jesus and pointing our fingers, because that's always going to backfire. That's always going to backfire. Most always, that's going to backfire. Some people need that black and white that you talked about.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say there's a gray area here, because needing Christ or not needing Christ is black and white.
Yes.
But how you go about approaching people, there is gray areas.
There's some nuance to it, isn't there?
There is. Yeah. Lane and Landon and Holly and I, we've talked about this several times in our nightly time, but we talked about this the other night. What is the right way to witness to people? And we kind of had the old debate of, should you go into a bar to witness to people?
Yeah.
And, we're not going to get into that here. I think you bring people out of the bar to witness to them, but there's no right or wrong here. I mean, there's plenty of wrongs. There's plenty of wrong ways to do it. And pointing your finger many times and saying you need Jesus is probably not the right way. But you're right. There's a lot of gray here.
There's a story that I love to share. It's one of the most impressive I can't hardly think about it even without starting to tear up. We had a pastor at our church at one time. He was an older guy. He was filling in as an interim at one time. He was retired. He preached at one of the biggest church here in town. And he tells a story where he was at a conference or something. Mm-hmm. And he got up one night, he couldn't sleep. It was like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. He got up and he just couldn't sleep. He went down to Waffle House, and he goes to Waffle House, and there's a lady in Waffle House who is clearly doing things she shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. She's involved in a profession that is not what we would think is a noble one.
Sure.
But he goes and sits down next to her and starts to talk to her. Here's a preacher talking to a prostitute, basically saying, "What's going on?" And what he did was he just started talking to her. He didn't start off with, "Well, you know what you need? You need Jesus."
Sure.
He just started asking her questions about her.
Because she doesn't know who Jesus is at that time.
That's right. Exactly. That's the whole point here. And then, so what he does is he found out that her birthday was the next day. And so he asked her, "Do you come here every night?" And she said yes. So the next day, he went and got a birthday cake and brought it to the Waffle House at 2 o'clock in the morning and brought hats and little he did the whole 9 yards of this birthday party for this woman. Talk about showing somebody you care, right? And now what did he have? He had an audience that was going to listen to anything he said.
Sure.
And he was able to share Christ with that woman. And that's what we're called to do.
Sure.
That's how we're called to be.
Good word.
Scripture passage number 2, Philippians 1:6, "For I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work among you will complete it by the day of Christ Jesus."
You know, Dean, this is one of those we talk about all the time where I've read this passage, I don't know how many times, but this morning it hit me different.
Yeah.
And it hit me, it's not in the context of what we're talking about, and it's not in the context of Shannon's story, but it's in the context of, do we always encourage people? And because if you go on down to verse 7, you find out that Paul's writing this from prison. He is in prison.
Yeah.
And he's saying, "For I'm confident in this very thing that he began." He's encouraging these people while he's in prison.
Yeah.
And, now there's a sermon right there. I mean, how often do we give encouragement when things aren't going our way?
We sulk instead.
We do, but those can be the times where we can have the most impact. Mm-hmm. Is because people know Paul's in prison. Do you think those people listened? Absolutely they listened. They knew Paul was in prison.
Yeah.
But he's writing and encouraging us. My life can't be that bad.
Yeah.
He's in prison and I'm being encouraged by him. Yeah. And there's such a lesson there that we all have our days where we just don't want to talk to people.
Yep.
And I get it because I have those every now and then. But that's where we can grow. We can grow a lot right there. Because what's going to happen is we're going to encourage people. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to be encouraged.
That's true.
And it's going to pull us out of that bad day in the process, because that's how God works. Mm-hmm. He'll use your own words back on you, both good and bad.
Yep.
A lot of times he'll smack us in the face with our own words, but a lot of times he'll lift us out of a valley with our own words that were given to somebody else. So there again, that's just one of those times where I've read that verse many times, but it just hit me different today.
Yeah. Well, and we've all been part of this. We've all seen this where God just continues working on us. There's issues, I've talked about them before, that I've had myself, that where God has just refined and he keeps working on it. And I still have a way to go in some of those things. But yeah, to look at this and to think he talked about all this while he was in prison, and that's hard. to think about doing that myself. I think about when I'm not in a good mood and how hard it is to be encouraging. Now, sometimes you do it, but it's hard, and you're selective.
We get in a
about
bad
the way you
mood
do it.
sometimes because we have a bad workout.
Yeah.
Paul didn't allow himself to get out in a bad mood from prison.
What a difference. How about this scripture? Isaiah 43:18 and 19. Do not call to mind the former things or consider things of the past. Behold, I am going to do something new. Now it will spring up. Will you not be aware of it? I will even make a roadway in the wilderness, rivers in the desert. God, I love this quote. Oh. The first time I really, really paid attention to this quote was when I was interviewing somebody we had a Connect magazine that we did a few years ago, and I was interviewing an instructor that we had, and he brought this quote up, and I just love this quote.
He makes the impossible possible.
Yeah, and the quote is so much bigger than we look at it. We go rivers in the desert. Yeah, that's interesting. We get the analogy, we get the contrast, and we understand what it means. But in this day and time, it was way more powerful than it is today when this was written. So think about that in their day and time, how big a deal that would be. Man, just crazy. All right, question number 1. When you are experiencing challenges in your life, be it relationships, professional goals, or even running, do you tend to try to solve those things in your own power, or do you go to Jesus first and let him direct your problem solving?
We never do that, do we? We never try to solve problems on our own.
Man, I wish I had a more positive answer for this one. But I don't. I mean, that's our first thought is always whatever comes to our mind is what to do. I mean, it's I don't know why people have to poke me in the ribs like this, but
this is a toe stepper.
But thanks, Shannon. But and it's a little bit of both. I think as God continues to refine me, as her story talks about, we get better at that.
We do.
Here's what happens for me. It used to be that I tried to solve everything on my own. Then it was, I tried to solve everything on my own. When it didn't work, I went to God. Then it's now it's more like my first thought is to do it my way. But before I ever even try to do it my way, my thought is, what am I trying to do? Let's go to God.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I don't think the tendency goes away.
Yeah.
I think God's reminder comes quicker.
Yeah.
The closer we are to
That's
him,
right.
the faster we hear his voice. Because in every situation, just about, if I'm being completely honest, if there's this thing happening over there, my first thought is, what am I going to do? I'm a doer. I want to fix things.
Yeah.
But the more my faith journey and my walk with Christ continues, it's me closer to him. And the closer you are to someone, the more clearly you hear their voice and the quicker you hear their voice. And I think that's what happens as we get closer to him, that voice comes quicker. I don't think now God can change our tendencies, but at least for me, my tendency is still,
Oh yeah.
let's fix this. But many times I get that gentle hand, or I have God pulling on my earlobe, or sometimes it's just smacking me upside the head saying, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yep.
Let me handle this.
And it gets quicker and quicker.
It does.
I think it's a daily relationship.
It is
what it is. And I think about it in the context of my wife. I treat my wife well. Why? Because we have this relationship and we have a mutual respect for each other. And I don't care how I feel about what's going on at any time. I'm going to respect my wife. Period. That's just the way it works. Whenever we go somewhere, I hold the door for her because that's my way of showing respect for her. Now, some people think that's crazy or whatever, and it's old fashioned. Doesn't matter to me what people think about it. It's what I do because it's honoring to her. And she, in turn, a lot of times will stop at a door and wait for me to open that door. Why is she doing that? Is it because I'm her slave and she wants me to open the door for her? No, right. It's her respect for me wanting to allow me to do that thing that's respectful to her, because it goes both ways.
Sure.
And I think that our relationship with Christ has to kind of be that same way. My automatic default is to do things for her that are good for her. Her automatic default too is to protect me, to send me a text going, hey, remember you got this thing, because she knows how bad I am and how I may forget something. And it may not be something I was going to forget, but man, I appreciate that text anyway, right? And that's the relationship that we have to have with Christ, where we have and if we have that relationship, our default, our first thing we think about is, all right, what would Christ have me do in this moment? Right.
The only reason I was laughing is because we compare. It's kind of a running joke around here. We compare you and Lane.
Yeah.
Y'all are very similar. Just this morning, he's going to kill me if he hears this. It's Veterans Day right now as we're recording this. And I had told him 2 weeks ago, hey, Veterans Day's coming up. Lane does all the social media stuff for Run for God. I said, do something for Veterans Day. And so we get up early this morning. He comes downstairs. I said, hey, don't forget about that Veterans Day post, thinking he's already done it. Well, all of a sudden he just disappears. And I'm like, he forgot that Veterans Day post. Anyway, that's a side note. But what I was going to say is, yeah, it's like your relationship with Debbie, but it's also like mine and your relationship.
Yeah.
When we first met each other, there's things I thought about you that I wouldn't say, and there's things you thought about me that you wouldn't say because we didn't have that kind of relationship. Well, now we don't care what each other thinks. If I'm thinking about you, I'm going to say it. And if you're thinking about me, you're going to say it. And that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good, that means we trust each other. We're not going to be offended. And we know that it's coming out of love. And it's the same way with Christ. If we're far away from Christ, if you and I didn't see each other for the next 5 years, and I came up and I didn't like how your hair looked, 5 years down the road, I'm not going to say it because we hadn't seen each other and the relationship's changed.
Right.
But today, if you do something funky with your hair, I'm going to tell you, that looks dumb, Dean. What little's left. But it's the same way with Christ. The closer we are, the louder we're going to hear his voice.
Yeah.
The more time we let go between conversations. It's not that he's not talking.
Yeah.
It's that we can't hear him.
Yeah.
And great question.
Yeah, good point. And by the way, I'm gonna start a ponytail here pretty soon.
Rat tail?
Yeah.
Mullet? Those are coming back, by the way.
Yeah,
Have you noticed that?
Here's another question. If you have felt frustrated in your quest to become a new creature, have you considered that the word becoming indicates a process and not an instantaneous happening? Of course, that's what we've been saying. That's kind of the whole point of everything that we've been saying.
When I thought about this, of course, I just mentioned I saw it on the news this morning, but, we've become an Amazon society. We want things now. And what's making the headlines right now? It's the supply chain crisis. Yeah. Number one, why is everything always a crisis nowadays? And it's being said all over the news that it could take weeks for you to get your Christmas gifts. When I was a kid, and this is going to show my age to some people, when I was a kid, you got the catalog, and you flipped through, and you went to the back legend, and you wrote down what it was you wanted, and you talked your parents out of a check, and you put it in an envelope, and 4 to 6 weeks later, that was always 4 to 6 weeks later, you'll get your gift. I mean, Amazon is nice but to what end? I think the idea of consistency over time is lost on many. I say that a lot for training. Training plans are important. Recovery is important. All these things are important, but it's consistency over time.
Yeah.
That's the important part. It's true with our training. It's true with our faith walk. It's true with our marriages. Mm-hmm. When you first married Debbie, there were things that you do for her now that you probably didn't do back then because you've learned and you've been refined. And but I think so many people, they want a close relationship with Christ and they want it now.
Yeah.
Because they get their package in 2 days. Why can't I have a close relationship with Christ in 2 days? And that's just not how it works. Think about it as any friendship.
Yeah.
You don't meet somebody today and invite them into your home today.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in some cases, but
Or be best friends tomorrow.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a process. It's being consistent with your fostering, cultivating that friendship, cultivating your walk with Christ, cultivating your runs. You know, just like she said in the story, if you go out and run 10 miles the first month of running, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be good. And that's why all these things take time.
Yeah. Yeah. What we're trying to do is we're trying to change our default position. And in order to do that, we know to change a habit, it takes time, no matter what the habit is. And our habit is to go back to, no matter, just because God changes us doesn't mean that he changes everything about us. And those things have to fall one at a time.
The tendencies are going to, we just said it, the tendencies are going to stay there.
Yeah. You know, one tendency that I think about that I still, because it depends on how often that thing happens too, right? If you have a tendency to get angry in traffic, for example, well, you know what? It depends on how often you're in traffic as to how long it's going to take for you to conquer that problem that you have with getting angry in traffic. And that, for me, we don't have much traffic around here. And I don't drive in traffic very much. That was a serious weakness of mine. It took me a long time to get over that because I wasn't exposed to it as much. I think about this.
But the minute you drive back to Atlanta, Georgia,
I'm better at it now.
But the tendency, you can feel it coming up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about this past week. You know, our girls ran really well at our conference meet, and still to this day, the first thing I want to do after any race, whether I run it or I coach it, is call my mother. I always called her after every race. She wanted to know every detail of every race, and I still want to do that, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that the things that we shouldn't be doing from a biblical perspective, that's kind of the way we have to look at it. We have to look at it like that we don't have access to that anymore.
Yeah.
And we can't do that thing.
You know, a funny story, and I just told this story a few days ago, so I'm going to tell it on here because I think it's pretty funny. But it's talking about tendencies and your old ways. You know, you have to manage that even years down the road. You know, I've told on this podcast that I used to be a smoker. You know, when I was young, I was a smoker, and I finally quit. And 6 years later, you and I, along with the triathlon team, were building a cross-country course at our church property. And when I quit smoking was right before Run for God started. And so I officially came kind of out of the construction world for a period of years as we were starting Run for God. And so when I quit smoking, I was removed from that environment. And that environment was a big part of my smoking habit. Was you go to a construction site, there's a lot of people smoking. Anyway, you and I were building this trail. You probably remember me talking about this.
Yep.
But I remember pulling up to the area where we were staging everything, and I stepped out of my truck. I hit the ground. I smelled freshly turned dirt, which, if you don't know what that is, it's just where they're grading, and it has a unique smell. I smelled diesel fuel from equipment. I heard equipment. I heard hammers and saws going and all these things. I had been quit smoking for 6 years at this point. And as soon as I stepped out of my truck, I reached down and I patted my pants.
Looking for cigarettes.
Looking for my cigarettes. And that blew my mind when it happened, but there's so many illustrations come out of that you have to keep your guard up.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, my pastor said something one time that really just blew my mind. He said, I will never make the statement that I will not cheat on my wife.
Yeah.
And I think I've said that on here before.
Yeah.
But his point being, when you start to take the posture that you've got this, you notice he said, I will never cheat on my wife. He will always say, Lord willing, I will not cheat on my wife.
Yeah.
But the minute we think we've got this is about the same time that we think we don't need God.
Yep.
And about the same time that we realize we don't got this.
Yeah. Good point. Last question. Have you ever been stuck in your mind in a past situation that was caused by a bad choice? How has that affected your attempts to move forward? I've shared it with you before, this with me, and you know that it's a struggle that I have. It's I worked at the same company for 25 years. I was very passionate about my job, and I didn't understand why other people weren't just as passionate as I was and weren't just as focused as I was. And because of that, I sometimes had not ugly words, but pointed words with people, very direct words with people. It got me into some trouble. Right. And, you know, it led to consequences that weren't great. And finally, it led to this point of me going, you know what? If you guys don't want me around here, I'll just leave. But because of that experience, I approach things differently today.
Sure.
I'm a little bit skittish about pushing on things today because I see where it got me in the past, right? So we have these experiences and they change what we do today. Now I can look back on an experience now and I can go, well, I made some bad choices and I did some things I shouldn't have done. But in the moment I was justifying every single one of them. And now that's led to me being a little bit more, again, I use the word skittish. I think it's a good word. So my heart is different today. The way I treat people is different today. The way I approach people is different today. But I'm still a little stuck back there every once in a while.
You still have those tendencies every now and then.
When things happen. So it's just this. That's what it is. And I'll have to live with it. But God will keep getting me better at handling that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of in summary for Shannon's story, you know, we need to take inventory of our lives occasionally. Many things in our past are good to look back on and they help us move forward, while others pull us back to a point in time where we wish we could move forward.
Yeah.
And we need to earmark those times that help us move forward and ask God to remove those things that drag us back. Because one thing about God, if you ask him to do that, he will do it. If it's going to be good for us, he will do it. But so many times we just try to suppress that thing or whatever it is, and this is one of those times where you got to take it to God.
Yeah, for sure. While you are working hard to keep your body in shape physically, the music you listen to while you run can help keep you in shape spiritually. We have partnered with JRadio to put together a group of running playlists by Mitchell, Lane, Holly, me, and others that you hear on the Run Club podcast. Plus, you can listen to a playlist put together by members of Run Club just like you. Check out the whole station of Run for God playlists now at JRadio.com and in the JRadio app. All right, we're back, and virtual running has become a bigger thing ever since the pandemic, hasn't it? People using things. I was just reading something about the higher use of things like Strava and online tools have gone way up since the whole pandemic thing. It just kind of changed the way we look at running, didn't it?
Sure.
And people during that time, people did a lot of virtual races. But I've noticed that although we are getting back to doing normal races and things again, the races are not back to full strength.
No.
I guess there's still some people who are a little worried about it, but I've never understood the virtual race thing anyway.
You and me, either one.
Yeah.
The first year we did the Pinky, we had a virtual race. It was an all-female race, and we did a virtual component to it as well. The ladies here in the office, Holly and Gay, were like, we need to do this virtual. And that's kind of really when you first started seeing virtual races. I hadn't even seen any. And you and I both were like, what? Nobody's going to pay money to run a virtual race and then we mail them a medal. We were basically chastising them because that's just not a good idea. So they finally talked us into do it, and boy, we had our words.
Yeah,
the registration for the virtual was way more than the physical race.
Yeah.
And
it was crazy.
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but I get it, and it's been good for a lot of our classes because around here during the spring, fall, summer, you can pretty much find a race within 30 miles in any direction on any given weekend. But a lot of places, they don't have that. So it has been good for those classes that needed a graduating race. They kind of just made their own, and they were using virtual races. So it's got its good sides.
Well, it's just the running world's changed a little bit.
It has.
And we just have to adapt to it. All right. It is time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. You know, we often use the word lazy to describe someone who doesn't want to do something, but sometimes it's a more complicated problem. And this is a story I actually wrote back a few years ago, and it's called The Insidious Nature of Complacency. That title sounds awful, doesn't it? The dictionary defines insidious this way: having a gradual and cumulative effect, or as it relates to a disease, developing so gradually as to be well established before becoming apparent. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with runners who are struggling with motivation, and they mention how it all began. I missed one run, and that turned into 2, and then 3. Before I knew it, I'd taken 3 weeks off, and I felt like I was going to have to start all over again. It's not too difficult to overcome one day off, but it gets tougher each day you miss. Complacency is insidious. If you're a veteran runner, you have probably experienced this scenario. If you're new to running, you will, more than likely, experience what it's like to have this snowball roll over you. Overcoming or sidestepping the snowball is a test of will and motivation that requires you to dig deep into your inner strength. It usually takes planning and deliberate steps to get back in the groove again. It's the same way with sin. When we commit sin for the first time, it's not necessarily difficult to recover from, provided that we recognize the need to do so. The difficulty comes when we find ourselves too far from God or simply too busy to recognize the problem. The more we commit the same sin, the more difficult it is to recover from it. For example, I've had difficulty with anger for a good portion of my life. I've had a tendency to lose my temper in situations where I felt pressured or disagreed with something that was happening. I never saw the need to fix anything because I just excused it as that's just who I am. It took me a long time to recognize how destructive that sin is, and even longer to realize that I needed to do something about it. Once I decided to change, it was an incredibly difficult transformation, one fraught with repeated frustrations as I slipped back into that same habit that I had perfected over many years of practice. It required deliberate effort to make progress, and I still have to work on it today. Make no mistake, that is Satan's objective. C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters is a great way to imagine how the devil works. The short book is a series of 21 letters of correspondence between senior demon Screwtape and his nephew and junior tempter, Wormwood. The younger demon wants to set out causing the patient to commit outrageous acts of sin. Here's the more experienced demon knows that this is not the way to turn him in the wrong direction. Here's what the older demon writes to the younger. You will say that these are very small sins, and doubtless, like all young tempters, you are anxious to be able to report spectacular wickedness. But do remember, the only thing that matters is the extent to which you separate the man from the enemy, which is God. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to keep the man away from the light. Murder is no better than the cards if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is a gradual one. The gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Isn't that how we fall into the most entrenched of bad habits and sin? It is a gradual descent to a place we never intended to go, but we are so busy sometimes we don't take the time to look around and see the light fading away. Once we are far enough away from the light, it's much more difficult to navigate our way back to the place we began. It is important to realize that just like sin can gradually take us farther from God, repentance is a gradual progression too. The act of being saved by grace is sudden and complete, but drawing closer to God through the shedding of sin is a process that requires repetitive deposits of time and energy focused on Him. This is such an important distinction and one that we must share. So many people believe that they are too far away from God for Him to ever accept them. They think they have to be nearly perfect before they can be saved by God's grace. But we are all sinners. No matter how close we get to Him, we're still human and we'll still fail. If we are consistently spending time with Him and focused on Him throughout the day, those failures will become fewer and many of our sins will fade away. But it doesn't happen overnight. I think we often look at being saved as an end, but it's actually a beginning. Problems and temptations don't just go away because we prayed a prayer. We talk like we have conquered the devil, but we're actually battling him daily. If you're saved and know that, if you are saved, you know that. But if we talk as if we only have perfectly shining moments in our lives, our unsaved friends and relatives could get the wrong impression. For most of us, it's not something we do consciously, but it can have the opposite effect we desire if we're not careful. Satan and sin is insidious. Read that definition again. Developing so gradually as to be well established before becoming apparent. Repentance, on the other hand, must be dealt with in the opposite manner. We have to invest purposeful effort to beat back a devil that wants to take us over. We have to realize that we have the power on our side when we choose to become a child of God. With Him, we can do anything. And if you're struggling with the motivation to get going after taking some time off, you have to invest that same purposeful effort to get back on track. Lethargy is insidious. It wants to take you over and control you. The good news is that we can overcome complacency because with Him, we can do anything.
That's an awesome story, Dean. That's got to be in your top 5 right there. I like that one.
And goes right along with Shannon's.
And it wasn't planned.
I didn't plan that. I pulled these two out, and this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. Yeah, change is hard, right? The devil wants to keep us where we are and doesn't want us to improve. It doesn't want us to do what we talked about in Shannon's thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's, the C.S. Lewis Screwtape Letters. I know the premise of it. I've never read it. I need to. I think I may actually have that book. But it's so true. Mm-hmm. That's why we call it a slippery slope.
Yep.
It's not a cliff. Very rarely is a person that's close with Christ. Just you hear people say, well, they just lost their religion or whatever you want to say, and they just went off of a cliff. That's usually not how it goes.
Yeah. There's
a lot going on behind the scenes that left unchecked can appear that they just fell out of religion or whatever. I hate to say it that way, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
It's always a small thing. It always starts with a look at somebody, a small misleading somebody, or all these little bitty things that C.S. Lewis talks about. The devil just needs to get that little foothold.
Yep.
And then tomorrow he'll get a bigger foothold. Mm-hmm. And tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, and before you know it, he's pulled you away from God and got you into a life of whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's so true. So yeah, great story.
Yeah, and from a running standpoint, if you've always been active, if you're one of those people who just started running in the last few years, well, your default is to do that thing you've always done. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's hard to get motivated to run again. And I get it. We've all been there, right? Every runner has been there where we just, gosh, I just didn't want to get out there today. But it's just.
Well, it's the same in running. There again, this is a very similar parallel. With running, we miss a day. And in that moment, we can say, okay, I missed a day. No big deal.
Yeah.
We'll start back tomorrow. But we missed that second day. And then we missed that third day and fourth day. And before you know it, we're saying, we throw our hands up. I've ruined it.
Yeah.
I'm messed up. I can't go back. And that is not that the devil's in our running, but that same mindset is the mindset we have when the devil's in our life. We're too far from God. We've messed up. We just need to throw in the towel. And that is not the case, because while we may be far from God, if we turn around, He's right there.
Yep.
And that's the important thing, is we're never too far from God.
Yep.
We may feel it. We may sense it. We may not be hearing Him. But if we'll just turn around and put our focus right back on Him, He's there. And it's not a gradual road back. It's instant.
Yep.
If we let God back in, it's instant.
Yeah. We've talked a number of times about getting outside our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm convinced that we don't grow unless we get outside our comfort zone. And here's the thing. Complacency is the very definition of your comfort zone, right? If complacency is your comfort zone, not doing anything is your comfort zone. And so this whole idea of complacency, getting outside of your comfort zone and doing things that are hard outside your comfort zone, I'm convinced that God blesses us more when we're not complacent.
Sure. Good word.
If you've ever participated in any sport, you've probably met a great coach. Great coaches inspire us to do more than we ever thought possible. You can be the leader that helps others achieve things they never thought possible. You, yes, you have the ability and the opportunity to be that person. All you need is a heart to help people and the ability to follow a plan. The Run for God 5K Challenge will come ready to help you inspire those around you. The step-by-step guide will direct you how to plan, pray, and train people both physically and spiritually. You can help them become more fit in their health and in their walk with Christ. Share your passion. Go to runforgod.com to find out how to inspire others to accomplish big things.
All right, so we're back. And become a coach. The Coach to Marathon Challenge. We're going to keep beating that drum because we know it will change your life just as much it will change the lives of those that you're leading, coaching, instructing, facilitating. It's worth it. So if I know it seems like a big task, and it is, but it's not as big as you're making it out to be in your mind. So log into Run Club, go on the coaching tab and check it out. But hey, Dean, we're starting the Black Friday sale today.
Whoa.
So we've got a lot of cool deals. Every year we kind of do the same sale. It's pretty much 25% off everything in the store with the exception of the Run Club gift boxes because those are just, that's such a good deal already.
Yeah.
We can't afford to knock 25% off that box already. But pretty much everything else in the store is 25% off. This is also when Molly Wade's shirt color kicks off.
Yeah.
We've never talked about that on here. Molly Wade, for those of you who don't know, she's one of our instructors up in
New Hampshire. No, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, somewhere up there.
Yeah.
She's got that accent.
Yeah.
We poke fun at each other. Anyway, she does a shirt color reveal every year, and I think she reveals it this week. But every year, she does for her class and her community, they buy a specific color Run for God shirt every year. And the cool thing that Molly does, because she can't always wear her Run for God shirt, unlike me, I wear it every day, all day, wherever I go. She's not able to do that. So every year, she puts the color of the shirt, she buys a feather that's that same color, and she wears it in her hair all year.
Yeah.
And so it does the same thing because, like, one year it was blue. Well, Molly, I mean, she's got blonde hair. She's in a professional setting, but she's got this blue feather in her hair.
Yeah.
And so people say, what's the deal with that blue feather?
Yeah.
Does the same thing the shirt does.
Yep.
So it's just really cool that, that's kind of a side story. But, yeah, the sale's on. It'll be on until next Monday. So go to runforgod.com if you want some gear. We got some awesome new hoodies and jackets and the Run Club box that we've already talked about. Lots of cool deals this week only, so go check it out.
That's awesome. Well, our girls did it. They won the
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, they thank you. It was a battle. It was a major battle. It was not a last year was kind of we felt like it was a foregone conclusion. We didn't run well and we still won, and we won by a lot. This year, no such thing.
Yeah.
It was a battle. We had one girl who's a senior who there was with a half mile left to go. It was basically a 1-point race between us and our rivals. And one girl who was a senior just absolutely looked like she was shot out of the cannon for the last 800 meters. And just, she passed 4 people, including one from the other team. And that was that gave us breathing room. When I saw where she finished, I was like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
So it was fun. We're headed to Vancouver, Washington.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be that's always fun. We're actually going to take a side trip, and we're going to go down to Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, I talked to some of your girls at church the other day, and they said y'all were going down there. That'd be. Lane used to race out there, and I always wanted to make that trip south, but we never did. But
yeah,
a lot of history there.
Yeah, they're going to be excited to do that. So we had the New York City Marathon just what was it? A few days ago, and did you see any of it? The guy that won, he just didn't look like a runner. Those
are my favorite.
His form was kind of awkward. He kind of looked like he was almost sitting down. He was kind of back a little ways. He's a Kenyan guy.
Yeah.
He was wearing shorts that looked like they were 2 sizes too big.
That's awesome.
He just looked awkward.
Yeah.
I don't think his shorts matched his top. I mean, he just looked like this guy who said, "Oh, you guys having a race? Can I get in?" And then he comes in there and blows everybody away. I thought it was great. It was great to see it.
I can't believe Shalane.
Oh my goodness!
What did she wind up running in New York?
2:33, I think.
I mean,
yeah,
that's incredible. Of course, you said last week that it would be. She would probably, because she was trying to do sub 250 for all of them. But
actually, she said sub 3 hour.
That's right. But you predicted that with the home crowd, the fact that she's won that race before, and she just she blew her goal out of the water on that one. And it was the 6th marathon in how many weeks?
6 weeks, I think. I think it was
6 marathons. Was it 6 marathons?
Yeah.
6 marathons in 6 weeks, and she finishes in
2:33.
33.
Yeah.
She's how old?
She's 40.
40. Retired.
Yeah. I think she's 40. She's at least 40.
What was the female's winning time at New York?
2:22, 23. Yeah.
So 11 minutes off the winner.
Yeah.
For a retired runner who's run 5 other marathons in the previous 5 weeks.
Yes. I mean, it was pretty impressive. Yeah. Molly Seidel was pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, I didn't watch the race. I just picked up the highlights from Shalane.
She ran the fastest female time, American female time at New York ever. So she followed up her Olympic performance with another really good one.
Wow.
And actually the finish of that race, Molly was 4th. The first 3 ladies, they were just running shoulder to shoulder for the whole race. And it came down to the last quarter mile.
Really?
And man, the lady who won, it's the one that won the Olympics. And she looked like she was struggling more than the other two. The other two looked comfortable. And she just, man, did she hammer them over that. It was impressive. It was really, really impressive. So, yeah. All right. So, how about a trivia question for this week?
All right.
What do you think? This one is kind of I don't know if people know. People know what this is, but I don't know if they know what this is.
Most people don't, I don't think.
Yeah. All right, so here's the question. What is a side stitch and what causes it? So we've probably almost all of us have had that thing where we get this pain in our side, especially when we're not in good shape, and it hurts, and it hurts pretty bad. We have to stop. What is that? And
there's all kind of ideas on what fixes it too.
There are.
Because you see some pretty peculiar things going on when people have it, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just fixing this side stitch," and you're like, "Yeah, I don't think that's fixing that."
Yep. But let me tell you, I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that next week.
All right.
So there you go.
A lot of people want to know that.
That's right. So if you know the answer, send it to dean@runforgod.com. Be the first person to send that to Dean@runforgod, and you'll win one of those Run Club boxes that everybody else is having to pay for.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty awesome. All right, every week I share a reason here why running is so awesome, and this week here's why running is so awesome. It makes better students. Or is it that better students are runners? I'm not sure, but runners are better students and students are better runners.
I think it could go either way.
Yeah.
I think discipline is learned.
Yep.
So either you have discipline that makes you a great runner, or you learn the discipline that makes you a good student.
Yep. Probably the most impressive thing that our college girls have achieved of all their achievements is that they have the highest GPA. They have the highest GPA of any of the sports teams at Dalton State, but they also have the highest GPA of any team of any sport in the entire conference.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but they're
Kudos
runners.
to them, yeah.
And runners just tend to have good grades. You know what other sport has good grades typically? Golfers.
I was going to say golf.
Yep. Golfers typically have good scores as well. All right. Motivational thought of the week. I will love the light, for it shows me the way. Yet I will endure the darkness, for it shows me the stars.
I've never heard that.
That comes from Og Mandino. If you've never read any Og Mandino, he's got a bunch of short books that he's written they're all positive.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. Interesting guy for sure. All right. We're doing great. Keep up the great work.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Don't eat too much. Get a few extra miles in this week.
Yeah, but eat enough.
Catch a turkey trot.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a turkey trot.
You're going to do you're going to do a turkey trot.
Yeah, Lane says he's going to pace Landon to a big PR.
All right.
That's what he says.
Well,
so we'll see how that works out.
yeah.
They may be fighting by the time they get to the finish line, but you know how brothers are.
Yep. And I may run the one up in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
When, the sports barn turkey trot up in Chattanooga. I usually go run that most years. So we'll see. All right. Now may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.